Today I've been checking out Enshrouded, which is out now on Steam for $24.99. Enshrouded is an open world survival exploration game that weirdly reminded me a little bit of Pal World, minus the animals with guns, but I would say its main inspiration is Valheim. However, unlike Valheim, this is a handcrafted world. It can be hard to stand out in the survival exploration genre. The thing that kind of sets this one apart is that the world has been taken over by the Shroud. The Shroud is a fog that covers part of the landscape. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets. Once you enter the Shroud, you have a certain amount of time before you die. You can find things that will increase your time once in there though. Once inside the Shroud, you get harder enemies, bosses, and rarer materials. The game also allows you to play with up to 16 players. Obviously, as I have no friends, I played solo. The gameplay loop is a fairly bog standard affair for this type of game. You need to collect a bunch of resources to build things like storage, houses, armors, and weapons. Then as you progress, you'll need the more difficult resources to get. Then off you go and get them, and so on and so on. You also have this like altar thing, which you can upgrade via collecting certain resources. Upgrading it will allow you to expand your building area or build somewhere new. You can also fully reset your skills here as well. There are workers to find scattered throughout the world, which you must rescue, and then basically you make them your prisoner. Maybe this is why it reminded me of Pal World a little bit. They will sometimes give you missions for XP rewards. They will also craft specific items for you, which you can't do on your own. Basically, they're just crafting benches. I'm not really sure I like this approach though. I think it would just been better with a different type of workbench, as they don't really bring much personality to the experience. There are some lore and story running throughout the game. It's usually presented in finding some sort of book to read. I would say though I never felt really invested in the world, which was a shame. However, I don't think the story is too necessary in this type of game. You make your own story as you play. The more XP you earn, the more skills you will unlock, which makes it easier to progress. There's a massive skill tree, and what's nice, as I said, you can reskill at any time. Difficulty wise, what I did love is you can completely customize your experience. As my time is limited, I made the game much easier in terms of XP farming materials. But what is good is once you're in the game, you can edit it. So if I got to a boss or some area that I was stuck at, I just made it a little bit easier for myself and got rid of that boring grind you can find yourself in sometimes. Then once you've done, just edit the settings back to your normal settings and off you go. Building is obviously a big part, and to be fair, it's pretty good. It allows for loads of options and it's easy to understand and place what you need to. It's probably on par with Valheim. I'm not sure it's quite as good, but you can build almost anything. Crafting is also really well done with loads of options. It's easy to understand and you can get really creative with your characters in weapons and armor. You can also dig down around the world and get resources, dig underground, dig through caves. And this is also pretty well implemented. Combat wise, I would say on the whole, it's fairly good for this sort of game. However, the blocking is not so good. It doesn't really leave any room for error. You have to be totally exact. I think it could be improved and a little bit more leeway given to the player. AI isn't the best here. Usually they just run at you. However, enemies with bows will try and get distance away from you, which I thought was pretty cool. There's also bosses in the game, and these are generally quite fun to fight and offer quite a challenge. The movesets do tend to be a little bit easier to understand, but they're not too complicated, which is what I like. There's also a good variety of enemies. Graphics wise, this is a beautiful game, especially at night. Soaring over the fog in your wingsuit just looks incredible and stunning at times. Bosses and assets all look great. The enemies are well designed. Lighting and effects are just top notch. It's honestly one of the most beautiful survival games out there. Sound wise, it's probably not quite as good. You know, the people you bring back to your base just go, they don't really say anything. But what is there is not too bad. Overall, I would say Enshrouded pretty much does the survival genre a great service with its beautiful world and deep crafting system. I mean, yeah, there's some rough edges. Sometimes the missions are not clear. With waypoints especially, it'll be like, your waypoint is above, and you're like, no, it's not. And you actually go underground, like it makes no sense. It can be really super confusing. It's one of them games you will need a guide open to work some things out. But if you love this type of game and the exploring in this one is done really well, it's worth adding to your list to check out. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got to say on the matter. Catch you all later. Goodbye.